3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Lots to get to on today's program. Our buddy Alan Cole, GamecockScoop.com, Rivals website, covering Carolina, will join us coming up bottom of the hour. Get into a little hoops, a little baseball. Interesting notes from our buddy Josh Pate on SEC football. That's what he does. We'll get into that for you coming up in just a little bit. NBA history last night. I know we don't talk tons of NBA. We have of late, though. I mean, heck, the NBA made history last week with one of the biggest trades in sports history, not just basketball history. And a couple of NFL things to get to. Colin Murray-Boyle's on the radar of some NBA teams, so a lot on today's program. We always encourage you to be part of what we do, 803-404-6100 on the phone lines or the Firehouse Subs text line. And you can hit us on Twitter as well, 1075 The Game, the easiest way to do that. Or you can hit me at jphillips1075. So Carolina has Ole Miss tonight. Carolina is 0-10 in conference play. And I'll let Elijah set some of this up in just a second. But in addition to looking at tonight and later on, of course, as we do for every basketball game, we'll have the EBPI. That's the Elijah Basketball Percentage Index. Not to be confused with anything else that may start with E. John Rothstein is CBS, by the way. At least gives Carolina a chance tonight. I mean, they've been.
That's nice of him.
That's the thing that's made this hard. And I was just telling Terry and Tyler, and it's something you and I have talked about, Elijah. Carolina, if you just measured their metrics, and this isn't like something that's going to be a fantastic review, 5 stars. But Carolina is nationally speaking, an average basketball team. They are not they are rock bottom in their conference, yes. But when measured against the nation and some of those other things, you beat a good Clemson team at least, and you beat a couple other ACC teams, and you had the one awful loss to start the campaign that seems to have just maybe now been a real foreshadowing of what has come. But you just picked the worst time, as you said, Elijah. You picked the worst time to be the worst team in what is the best conference in the country when that conference has never been better. And that is how you should, to a large degree, be measured. But I'll let you set up the rest of the conversation that we'll have a little later on in the program, because you and I found this to be an interesting exercise in terms of maybe how people perceive certain programs across the country, right?
And the difficulty of what they are. Like, there are some really hard jobs in the Power Four in college basketball. And there's a common denominator with a lot of them, and that's that they are football-heavy schools. Like, a lot of the funding goes into football. That's where the majority of the focus for a lot of the schools, that if you were to be asked what the hardest jobs in the Power Four are, and we'll exclude, obviously, the Big East, because even though it's a power conference of its own in basketball, they don't have a football machine that they keep, running. But there are a lot of common denominators, the hardest gigs in P4, and that usually comes down to reliance of your athletic department on football. It also comes down to maybe a lack of history in terms of making the NCAA tournament a ton, and then commitment to upgrading facilities. And there are some things that I know you can group South Carolina into being a hard job just because of the conference you play in and some of the opponents that you face year in, year out, especially right now. But there are also ways that South Carolina, if you group them with a lot of other schools that are really hard jobs in the P4, they have some advantages. And we'll get into that later on as well, what type of advantages they have over, let's say, your Nebraskas, your Penn States, your Minnesotas, Southern Cal even. A lot of those jobs that are pretty tough, men's basketball jobs, you have certain advantages over. And then there's also an example that you have staring you in the face right now within the number one team in the country in Auburn that has never fully committed to basketball until they got the right coach in the right situation.
Right.
And I feel like Lamont can be that coach because you already seen some proof of concept behind it last year. But progress isn't always linear, and there were even examples of what Bruce Pearl did at Auburn that took some time. He had some bad basketball teams. They got their teeth kicked in the SEC for about 3 whole years before they turned that thing around. I mean, it can be done at all the places that we'll mention. It's just a little more difficult.
And one of the things you said, too, and I know what you meant when you say reliance on football for the athletic department, I would take a subset of that and say, because so many schools have a reliance on football,
on it, yeah.
but it's also, dare I say, the passion of the fan base for the sport at certain schools. And I'll say, and I want to be careful because we got things to get to, so I don't want to start this too much right now. But I was telling you and I have not had this particular conversation, but I know if those of you who have listened to me through the years have heard me say this, and maybe I'm being subjective, and even though I don't want to admit it, maybe I'm a little naive when it comes to this, but only because of where I live and where I went to school and who I follow and all those kind of things. But it's baffled me for a long time, and that's the word I'll use, that South Carolina men's basketball isn't better. I don't mean that it should be North Carolina basketball.
Right. That's a pretty lofty standard to achieve.
But when I look through the years at Tennessee or Florida as really prime examples, what boat did Carolina not get on? And I've told you before, I was explaining to you this morning even, when South Carolina won the Southeastern Conference Championship under Eddie Fogler, plans were put in place almost instantly at that point to build a new building. And like I was telling you, it takes time. That was the 1997 season, and I think CLA opened, 01, 02?
Something like that, early aughts.
But when you want to build something massive at Big State U, anywhere in this country, there's a lot of hurdles to jump over, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through. First, can you pay for it, A?
Always a big question.
Once you've answered A, B, where are you going to put it? C, who's going to build it? D, are you going to, can you sell it out? Can you fund it in terms of got to go pre-sell the luxury suites, and there's a whole host of things. Not to mention, by the way, since it's Big State U, the hurdles of government clearance and bond issues, and at least in the case of specifically CLA, multiple municipal or county governments and state government all getting together to chip in here and there, and because obviously concerts and the circus and Disney on Ice and whatever else is in there, and look, state high school basketball championship, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's going to be a multi-purpose building. Unlike, say, Auburn or Ole Miss's new buildings, which are great buildings, and they can be, quote, multi-purpose, but you're not having lots of stuff in a city of, 800, 900,000 in there on a regular basis. So anyway, the point is, I come back to that. This school supports it financially, socially, enthusiastically with fans, at least when you've got a product they want to go cheer for. And yet, I don't want to say it's never mattered, but I do the shoulder shrug.
Would you say it's never maxed out its potential?
Absolutely has not.
Yeah, because there's a lot of potential here. I would even just fall short of saying South Carolina men's basketball can be a sleeping giant, especially considering what also exists in that building with Dawn's program. I'm not saying that the men's program can ever be winning a national championship, going undefeated, and constantly racking up rosters that are nothing but 5-star McDonald's All-Americans. Don't think that could ever happen, but at the same time, you can be in a position where you're kind of like a school, let's just say Mississippi State. There's no reason why you can't be Mississippi State.
Yeah,
who always has good teams regardless of coaches.
And I promise you, Elijah, and you know this, I guarantee if you went out and polled 100 college basketball analysts, whoever they may be, TV guys at The Athletic, USA Today, ESPN, whatever, whoever they might be, right? 98 out of 100 of those, if you said, which program is better suited for you to be successful in right now? I think 98 out of 100 would say Mississippi State over South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And my question is, Why? And that's what again, I come back to baffled. I'm not being like, and you're not either. We're not sitting here going, South Carolina men's basketball. Why would you even think about it? No. And look, Frank Martin had gone to an Elite Eight and knew South Carolina was about to hire somebody else and got his agent to say, I want that job.
That job, yeah.
And he came and, look, it could have been better. A lot of things didn't go Frank's way. I'm not going to get into all that right now. But he wanted that job. I mean, I know that story, and he wanted that. That was an 11th hour move, man. So the point is, you can get a dude who was at a place that does well to want the job,
and he was doing really well at that spot.
So I don't know. But again, I come back to a place like Florida. I was looking it up today. Florida's first ever trip to the NCAA men's basketball tournament was the year I graduated high school, man, 1989.
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy to me.
Dwayne
Shinsis, Vernon Maxwell.
Was that,
I don't know if Shinsis was there. He might have been a couple years later. I don't know. I remember that mullet. But Vernon Maxwell, who went on to play, I think, for Houston, for the Rockets.
Yeah, he
for a little
did.
bit. Yeah.
All-time Twitter beefer, man. That guy's got a whole Twitter beef with the entire state of Utah. It's hilarious.
Vernon Maxwell does?
Oh, dude. It's whenever you get the chance, just look up Vernon Maxwell's tweets, and almost every single one ends with some type of shot at Utah, at the state of Utah. Everybody needs some type of adversary in their life to maybe try to motivate them and get them better.
Right.
But nobody has a personal adversary quite like Vernon Maxwell has in the entire state of Utah.
But a little later on, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. So please weigh in however you see fit to contact us. Again, text line might be the easiest, 803-404-6100. And I know we've had, as I said, variations of this conversation before, and we'll get into greater detail in a bit on where Elijah saw some things to pose that kind of question. And do me a favor, be ethical about this. Okay? Don't go looking it up yet. Not that everybody's going to win a prize. What current, and I'm going to kind of look at it what current Power 4, so no Big East schools, and, wherever anybody is right now. So what current Power 4 school has the least amount of NCAA men's tournament appearances? Because Elijah and I were going over all.
If you followed the sport for a while, you remember how big of a deal it was when this team got in.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, of course.
I didn't even cross my mind. But just again, ethically, just guess. If you want to look it up. Again, I'm not going to sit here and holler at you for it. We'll do that for you, too. Come back on the other side. We'll start looking ahead to tonight's game. Dawn Staley had some things to say on Carolina Calls last night about her ball club. We'll do that for you, too. Got a few national things to get to as well. So a very busy Wednesday, and Alan Cole coming up in about 15 minutes. 803-404-6100. It's the Wednesday postgame show. I'll tell you about our good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. Yes, it's still winter. Yes, it's a little rainy and cold right now. But listen, that rain is going to soak in nicely, and soon enough here it'll be hot and humid and everything will be growing. Make sure that you've got all the power tools you need to keep your yard looking nice and trim all year long. Cato's has a complete line now of battery-powered power equipment, all right? Like blowers, mowers, trimmers, edgers, saws, all kinds of stuff for you. And those batteries interchange, very easy to use. Many of them, according to our buddy Matt at Cato's, just as powerful as the gas-powered engines that you've become accustomed to through the generations. So stop in and see. Ben's all excited. They've completely remodeled the place, 4012 West Beltline Boulevard, where they've been since the early 1980s. Whether you do it for yourself, whether you do it for a living, see Cato's for great sales, service, and advice. That's our good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. Welcome back in. 18 minutes after 3 o'clock here on a Wednesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you, 803-404-6100. A couple of things real quick. First off, let me say this. Many of you know this coming weekend is the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary show. It's actually going to be on Sunday. I think it's at least 2 hours long, if not 3 hours long. I'm very excited about it. If you have Peacock, and I don't know, I know you can get some things on Peacock for free. Like you can just download Peacock and get, like, there obviously is a paid tier as well. So I don't know, because I pay $5 a month for Peacock. I love Peacock's great, by the way.
Hey, I watched some good Big Ten basketball.
They got great sports. They pretty much have every episode of Saturday Night Live, and then they 30 Rock and Parks and Rec, and even if you are like me sometimes and you want to throw on like an old Columbo from the 70s, they have like every episode of Columbo. Anyway, they have some fantastic documentaries on Saturday Night Live. And one of them, my wife and I watched last night after the Kentucky-Tennessee game, is it's 2 hours plus, worth your time, on the music of Saturday Night Live. It focuses primarily on the musical guests, which has obviously always been a huge part of the show, right? I mean, typically 2 songs a night for whomever is the musical guest, but also how several musical guests became part of things like Mick Jagger and Madonna, Paul Simon. I mean, Paul Simon has become just synonymous for just being part of SNL, man. But how, like, Eddie Murphy would do James Brown or Stevie Wonder, Joe Piscopo doing Frank Sinatra, Phil Hartman doing Frank Sinatra. Like, it was awesome. And when it was done, my wife, when the credits rolled, we watched even through the credits because you needed to, right? And my wife went, "That was well done," and it was awesome. So if you love SNL and music, I'm here to tell you, check that documentary out. And again, I don't know if it's on the free portion of Peacock or not. Pay for it for a month or get the 7-day free trial or whatever, and just watch them. All right, just do that. But they've got one documentary exclusively on the cowbell skit.
Oh man,
hilarious!
One of the iconic ones.
They talked to They talked to 2 dudes from Blue Oyster Cult. They talked to the guy who was actually the producer of the song. That was kind of the Christopher Walken like mock guy. Anyway. I don't want to give stuff away. It's great. It's great. But I'm very excited about that show. And honestly, we're not working on Monday, so like Tuesday, I might come in here, and the whole show might just be Saturday Night Live stuff. I don't know yet.
Could be.
But be prepared. Be prepared. Before we talk to Alan, Ray wants to weigh in. I'm assuming on what we were just talking about?
Yep.
All right. Ray, what's up, man? Good afternoon.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, Jay, I'm like you. I'm just a few years older than you, but I know you've been going to Carolina basketball games probably since you were like 7 or 8.
Mike Dunleavy and Alex English, my man. I remember those years. I assure you.
I go back to Brian Winters. I don't quite remember the 71 ACC tournament championship, all that. I heard all about it, of course. But I'm like you. I'm as perplexed as you are. Now, I'm like you. I don't think we should be a UNC or Duke, but we should be consistently good. And, I mean, there's an appetite for it. And, Elijah, what I mean, we have fans to this day, and Jay can contest this, that don't even go to football games but go to basketball games.
I know plenty. I know plenty. Or at least they'll go to a little bit of football, but, love.
Yeah.
When I was doing tip-off club, I met a lot of those folks, man.
Forever. Yeah. So I'm as perplexed as Jay. I mean, when you think about it, okay, in the last 20 years, I can only count up 3 tournaments we've been to in the last 20 years.
That's right.
And I'm hoping the new AD Donati. Mm-hmm. I really wish he would do a deep dive into this. Not too deep, of course, but try to figure out, man, why can't it be done here? Because I'm telling you, Elijah, we have the appetite for it. We had the fan base for it. Even back in the old Frank McGuire Arena, I mean, that thing would be packed, 12,000 people. And, I mean, there's just no reason. But Jay could contest this as well. Somehow we would get up for – when we were an independent, we could get up for every big game. It was Notre Dame, Al McGuire, and Marquette, whoever. We could get them and play like ball busters.
Remember when DePaul
But the next week we'd play Toledo and lose,
Yeah.
I mean, but anyway, it's just very perplexing. But I'm hoping that tide changes. But, Jay, that's a head-scratcher to me as well.
Yeah, it is. And thanks, Ray, as always, buddy. I appreciate you. Yeah, it is. And I'm not, I guess, like I say, I'm not here to go, Carolina. Look, when Mike McGee fired Eddie Fogler, I would liken it maybe not to the same degree as we talked about a few weeks ago when Jim Holderman fired Jim Carlin. And now, again, because Jim Carlin was the AD, too. So the AD didn't fire the football coach. The president fired the AD/football coach. But Mike McGee and Eddie parted ways because McGee was putting too much on Eddie. And look, after BJ left and that BJ's last season, look, that was a collapse of monumental proportion. But Eddie needed to refill the talent coffers, and McGee got a little, rest in peace, a little too. I don't know. He just thought South Carolina should be even better. Eddie was like, hey, give me some time to really do this. This is, we have something going here, but it's going to take a little bit. And, McGee's patience, I guess, ran out, and that's a nutshell version. And look, I know the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle, but I certainly wish that Eddie Fogler had remained South Carolina's coach. And that's not a knock on Dave Odom, who I have immense respect for. And that was a good get at the time, considering, But anyway, yeah, there's support here. I don't remember when it was happening. Obviously, I wasn't born yet, but I mean, I've heard all the stories. And Carolina Coliseum, when it was built, allows you to go to the question of support for the program. Unlike CLA, which is a fine building and a very nice facility, there were a lot of people who would have said at the time when Carolina Coliseum was built, this is one of the 2 or 3 finest basketball facilities in America for its day, late 1960s. And again, I love that old building. I do. It's great. But the point I make is this school will support it. And again, I go back, man, when Eddie and them won, plans were almost instantly put in place and came to fruition within 5 years. You had a new building with 50% more capacity. Again, a lot of you have said that's too big. Okay, that's a subjective point of view, and that's fine if you feel that way. It's not too big if you're putting a product on the floor that people want to go see. Look at Dawn's
It wasn't
team.
Too big last year. I mean, it provides a really good home court advantage when it is packed and doing its thing. I mean, there's a reason Ron Slay on the SEC Network last season, and this would have been maybe a week removed from upsetting Kentucky on our home floor here, that he put CLA in one of the 5 hardest places to play in the SEC that year. And it's because it's got a great size, the acoustic, it's palpable. And it's one of those things where you do gain an advantage in a sport where home court advantage, if you have it, can steal you a lot of games. I mean, I have no doubt at all that it's not, consistently like that.
Right. So we've seen the support, and again, we'll have more on this topic coming up in a little bit. When we talk to Alan, it'll be more about tonight's game and where this team is. Real quick, let me get to Larry real fast before we hit that break. Hey, Larry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Yeah, this is a hoot. Okay, me and my grandma and some of the family are at Williams-Brice for a football game. This was 1969, and I forgot who we were playing, maybe Wake, and we were a little bit behind, and I start tugging on my grandma. I was only like 7. And I said, Grandma, they need to put John Roach in the game so we can win. He's like, he's playing the basketball team. I said, that doesn't matter. If they put him in the game, we win. Right. But Coach McGuire had quite a team that year. It was John Roach, Bobby Crimmins, John Reebok. What were the other 2 guys' names? Oh, Jesus.
Let's see. That would have been give me a second. Yeah, I'll come back around to him because sometimes my mind. No, Winters wasn't here yet. Joyce,
no, Brian came like a year or 2 later.
He was later, and Joyce might have been young, but probably not starting yet. I know some of you are screaming. I know some of you are screaming at your radio, but yeah.
How about Danny Traylor?
Could have been on the roster. I'll double check. But Roach, 2-time ACC Player of the Year, man.
Yeah, man.
I mean, he was. I appreciate. Look, that goes. And thanks for the call, Larry. I got to hit a break. Yeah. To Larry's point, when I was a little kid, I think I've told you this before. Jeff Grants was my first memory of a Gamecock star football player, and he wore number 12. And football was football back then. But I saw Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Bob Greasy. They all wore number 12. You instantly assume at that age, well, hey, if you
were number 12 is really good.
That's the best player on whoever. And like Carolina has a number 12. I mean, and these other guys everybody talks about. I hear so I get it, man. Yeah, just put what John Roach probably could have. Man.
I love the thought process of 7-year-old Larry. It's like John Roach wins games. Yeah. Let's put John Roach on the field right now. Right. He's a winner.
He's a winner.
I love the thought process there. I can follow.
Appreciate it, Larry. All right, Alan Cole on the other side of the break, GamecockScoop.com, rival site covering Carolina. Alan will help us start looking at tonight's game. Does the skid end as the Ole Miss Rebels come to town? That, and Alan's been following the baseball team ahead of opening day, just 2 days away. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Hey, do want to remind you that we've got our Friday big-time opening day show coming up live from Village Idiot on Whaley Street at the Mill. David Cloninger is going to be coming by. I believe Jack Veltri is stopping by. I'll be there. Tyler will be there. Come grab a slice, grab a pint, or again, 2 slices and 2 pints. It's up to you. You can mix and match the number of pints and slices you get. Totally up to you. We'll have some other special guests and get you ready for the weekend.
I'm pro high volume.
And I'm going to see if we can maybe get Cloninger to do some kind of like York County anti-rain dance.
Ooh.
I don't know what that looks like.
Do we want to know what it looks like?
I figure
I kind of do.
I figure if we can get Brian to just give David a little courage, we'll see what happens. That's on Friday. Talking some Carolina hoops, and we'll get into tonight's matchup as the Gamecocks host the Ole Miss Rebels. 7 o'clock tip, 6:30 airtime. We'll have it for you, of course, right here in Columbia on 107.5 The Game and all across the Gamecock Radio Network. Thanks to many of you who texted in or called in. Starting lineup for that team. Was that Larry that was that called in?
Yes. Larry was trying to recall.
John Roach, Tom Owens, Tom Riker, Bobby Crimmins, John Reebok. That's your starters. That team went 14-0 in conference play. But then lost. I knew this part. They lost to NC State in the tournament. And back then you didn't get to go if you didn't win your tournament.
That's right.
Which is
silly.
Whatever. But
I'm glad we've grown past that as a society.
Imagine that. Imagine today. Any conference that's a strong conference, you have an undefeated regular season, but then say lose in double overtime in your championship game, and you would be denied an opportunity to play for the national championship.
Would be so dumb.
What would people do? You know, like last year, Dawn's team. Let's say the LSU
Canelo shot doesn't go in.
Right. Let's say that, yeah, or that shot goes, but then like the next day LSU wins.
Season's over.
And South Carolina couldn't go to the national championship or to the national tournament. Like how dumb would that be? But that's what they did back in the day.
We also used to vote on football national champions.
We did.
I'm glad we have progressed as a society to finally get a lot of this sports stuff correct.
Well, it's weird to think that if you put a bunch of people in the right place and let them play for something, it would be the right thing to do. Alan Cole is with us, our good buddy from GamecockScoop.com, covering Carolina athletics. Good to have you. Been a couple of weeks. How you been?
Good. How have you? I'm hearing that South Carolina men's basketball can still get a tournament bid if it wins 5 games in Nashville. Is that what your conversation is? That must be it, right?
You know what? They could, but that's not. But now it is. No.
Saying there's a chance.
So, look, we've done a lot of digging on this team. You have too, certainly, Alan. And it's a good, look, it depends on how you want to measure the word good. This team is not dreadful. This team is not getting their doors blown off every night and has no business playing major college basketball. I texted Elijah the other day, and I'm gonna let you go from here. I texted Elijah while I was watching the Auburn-Florida game after a lackluster performance for Carolina at Rupp. And I said, make it make sense that South Carolina lost by a combined 4 points to Auburn and Florida, and yet just looked like they, had forgotten how to play. It's a lot of hit and miss right now in terms of where this team is. What did they learn about themselves in the off week? They didn't apply much at Rupp Arena, but is there any kind of turnaround you're looking at, especially with a guy like Cam Scott having played 18 minutes the other night? What's different about Carolina the next 8 games?
Yeah, the Cam Scott thing you mentioned, I think, is probably a big part of this because, I joked a second ago, you guys talking about tournaments and postseason. I think we all know where this season's going to end, and it's not in any kind of postseason. So then you're looking at what can you still get out of this year? What can you bring forward to the 25-26? And I think a lot of it is a guy like Cam Scott, who you had high expectations for, who hasn't really played well through the first 2/3 of his freshman season, seeing what you can get from there. There's that, and then I also think, I didn't think they defended horribly on Saturday. You were competitive against one of the best offenses in the country, a Kentucky team that's scored over 100 a few times in SEC play now. I think it still just comes back to this offense and what they're trying to do with that, and it specifically the guard play, and just how can you patch up some of those holes? How can you maybe make this offense simpler? It's something Lamont Paris has talked about a lot, and just how you can cut out some of the process and just make it more think first than action-based, or other way around, just act, not think for some of this. And that's really interesting to see as you get to what I think you guys would agree is not easy, but the more winnable part of your SEC schedule here at a lot of these games over the last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, and I think me and you were talking off the air, and we were kind of talking about how there's an avenue to win tonight. Obviously, you don't like going into a game against a team like Ole Miss that forces a lot of turnovers and rarely turns the ball over. When you don't force turnovers and turn the ball over a lot, but I thought you made a really good point on how this team can overcome that in a game tonight when this team's trying to get their first SEC win.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is if you could hit some shots tonight, Ole Miss isn't a great defensive team. They give up open looks, a lot of corner looks, something you mentioned we were talking off the air. If you can get some shots to fall tonight, and I know that's always the if, and you got to hold the ball long enough to get shots up. That goes back to your turnover point. But, like, you're not playing 2015 Kentucky tonight. Like, this is not a monolith. Like, if you can get some shots up, if you have an average game turnover-wise, not even a great one, just average in the turnover margin, yeah, you can win this game tonight. I mean, Ole Miss went to LSU on Saturday, who's the second worst team in the league, and they were down, 11 with 3 minutes to go before LSU completely melted down. Like, I think you can get this done tonight if you shoot the ball well enough and just don't have a horrific turnover game.
Alan, you mentioned something there with Ole Miss. And in fact, it's funny that you say that because independently of this conversation, I said the same thing to Elijah. Like, Todd Golden and Florida, just turned it up on Carolina after they had played really well. I'm envisioning something like that tonight. Where, when you've heard Lamont of late, or some of the players, whether it's post game practice opportunities, things like that, where do they see their biggest deficiency? I know they don't always want to let that on, publicly, but what is it that they believe they most have to overcome right now?
No, it's funny you say they don't want to bring it on publicly, because I think one of the more honest guys here that we've had in a while in any sport is Nick Pringle, and I think we were talking to him just as media after the game at Georgia a couple weeks ago, and he said, we're soft. Like, I think his exact quote was, we've let the conference know we're easy to push off the ball, or we're soft with the ball, something along those lines. And that goes back to Elijah's point about the turnovers. That goes back to maybe you're a little bit undermanned in the backcourt, and, your ball handling is not as good. But it's hard to hold on to the ball, especially in a league as physical as the SEC, when you're soft. So I think, and that's their word, that's not even mine. So I think if it comes down, some of that is just you don't have the horses right now with where you are and what this roster is, but a lot of it is just being tougher with the ball and being tougher to, I guess, hold on to the ball, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just, again, I'm not sitting here trying to call them out, but there's something. And Elijah, I'll toss it to you for the next question, but I think Alan hit it. We've said it. I'm starting to just understand most completely. This is a situation of not having enough horses to run the race.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the injuries hurt you a little bit. At the same time, maybe fitting some square pegs in round holes as it pertains to transfer players. I mean, I don't think Nick Pringle and Jamari Thomas are bad players. Maybe not the best fits in hindsight, but when it comes to this offseason, like, Alan, you saw what Missouri did in terms of overhauling the roster and going from winless in the conference to being legitimately competitive and can possibly earn a double bye if a couple of chips fall their way here in the next few weeks. What's maybe one thing that this program needs to look at as it pertains to kind of rebuilding a roster going into next season?
Yeah, honestly, I think it all begins and ends at the point guard position. I think you've seen in 3 years of Lamont Paris now with, just in college basketball, that's just where the sport is right now, but with his system, with how much pressure they want to put on the ball, with the way they play defense, with kind of that slower paced offense where it is more kind of decision-based, pass-based than it is maybe a NATO style where it's quick shoot first. You need a point guard, and you saw Talon Cooper last year and how good this offense was when he was at the controls, and the defense for that matter. And you've seen this year with, maybe Jamari Thomas, probably not an SEC point guard. And even going back to Lamont's first year, you had Meechie Johnson's a really good two guard. He probably shouldn't have been handling the ball as much as he was. So I think everything starts and ends there. Like, if there is one thing Lamont Paris, Tanner Bronson, Kerry Rich, whatever this staff has to do, is you need a point guard who can play in the SEC, who can run your system. And I think everything else kind of flows from that starting point.
Alan's going to hang around with us, talk a little baseball. On the other side of the break, again, Carolina hoops tonight, 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock tip at CLA. More with Alan coming up on the Postgame Show. 11 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Lettuce bringing us back. If I'm not mistaken, Elijah Campbell, Lettuce, part of the St. Patrick's Day lineup next month. If you've never seen him, you should go. Jay, Elijah with you, and our buddy Alan Cole is with us. We'll switch from Carolina hoops to Carolina baseball. Opening day just a couple of days away. In fact, I'm going to say 48 hours and 11 minutes. How's that? There we go. Alan, Coach Maneri dropped a little info on Elijah and me Monday when he joined us after the scrimmage that Jake McCoy would, at least for the weekend, round out the starting rotation, joining seniors Dylan Eskew and Matthew Becker. My question to you, what's the feeling around the ball club with the solidity of this particular Friday, Saturday, Sunday grouping?
I think everything's fluid right now just because it's so early. And you think about a guy like Jake McCoy, he's got 16 innings under his belt in college baseball in his career as a sophomore. You like the stuff. Maybe you like some stuff you saw at different points last year, but that experience is not where it is with Eskew and Becker. So you're going to have to just see it as a starter for a little bit. And then the other question that I think a lot of people had is Eli Jerzenbeck, a guy you thought might be your Friday guy coming into camp and through the fall, who has really struggled in the scrimmages, and he's out of the rotation entirely now. So, you know, maybe you see Jerzenbeck on some midweek to start the year. Maybe you just try to get him back going there. But I don't think Paul's going to hesitate if McCoy or Eskew or Becker, if there's struggles there. I think he does, and he said it on your show Monday, he feels like he has some depth and has some options, and it's all about getting that best three in place before SEC play. So I think it's still pretty fluid, but you have the three you want to go with right now, and it kind of worked itself out in the scrimmages based on, you know, kind of what I understand.
This may be more of an opinion question for you, but when it comes to Becker specifically, and you mentioned Jerzenbeck, is there going to be a hope that someone supplants Matthew, not because they're necessarily better at starting, but that Matthew's versatility allows for so much more for this pitching staff?
Yeah, I think that would be the absolute ideal situation. That was something Paul talked about even in the fall, that, you know, he liked the idea of Becker being, the term he used was kind of a swing guy, where if you've got a late lead on Friday you want to protect, maybe he can close the game for you. If someone gets rocked early, he can kind of do the long relief thing with the starting experience. And if you get through Friday and Saturday and he hasn't pitched yet, maybe he could start a game on a Sunday. So I think that would be the ideal, but you know, with a guy like Jerzenbeck's struggles, I think it kind of forced their hand right now, where you don't feel like you have three starters better than Matthew Becker right now. So you kind of have to have him in that rotation, at least either until he grabs it by the throat and he kind of solidifies himself there, or if someone else steps up and makes you comfortable enough to have him back in that swing role that Paul was describing.
And then from a lineup standpoint, I mean, he mentioned with us on Monday that, you know, he feels like he's got 13 guys that he could put in the order at any given time, and that's going to be what he's tasked with, is finding the combination of the right nine up and down the batting order. But when you look at this league, man, and all the teams that you're going to have to compete against once, you know, late March rolls around and you get into conference play, what's kind of the feel that you have of what the ceiling of what this lineup in terms of hitting can be?
I think there's still a reasonably high ceiling. I think it is just going to have to look different than you've seen in the last few years. I think there's, obviously, you know what Ethan Petrie can do. That's, you feel comfortable that setting that's 20, 25 homers. But I don't know if you have a second or a third guy you feel confident gets to, let's say, 15 homers. I think a Kennedy Jones can. I think if you get that power swing from Nathan Hall, he can. But I think a lot more of this lineup's just going to be kind of piecing it together, more of the small ball. You know, he was talking about KJ Scobie on your show on Monday, and you don't know what he's going to look like, you know, right off the gate as a freshman, but he's someone who can help you towards the bottom of that order just while he's kind of getting his feet wet. You know, Blake Jackson, you know, good contact hitter, had a hit for high average last year. So I think you're going to be able to, I think this team is going to try to steal more bases than it did last year too. I think the lineup construction kind of tells you that. So I think they're going to be able to score some runs. I don't think there's going to be the Ethan Petrie, Cole Messina, you know, going back 2 years ago, Braylon Wimmer, kind of just this guy's plug-and-play double-digit homers. I don't think you're going to see that from several spots in this lineup.
Alan, last thing for you. We got about a minute left. You've been to a couple of these scrimmages now under Coach Maneri, both fall ball and here of late. I don't ask this in any negative way about the previous staff or head coach, but did you notice a different vibe in how things were run, what they were doing under Coach Maneri?
It feels a lot more detail-oriented, and I know it's something Paul talked about a lot. That's not just, defense-related, though he does talk about that too. Just it feels a lot more intentional about what they're doing. I've been to some scrimmages where, a lot of the lineup combinations have been the same day to day to day, where you're trying to get guys comfortable playing around each other, guys in similar spots. It all feels very intentional. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if the ideas they have are the right ones, but there's something they're clearly trying to put together here, and we'll see how that looks, starting Friday, then going into SEC play next month.
Good stuff as always, sir. We appreciate it. Enjoy all the stuff you got going on. You'll be a busy man here on the beat this weekend and tonight and tomorrow as well. We'll talk soon. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
That is Alan Cole, Alan __, two of them, Cole, on the Twitters.
Don't short him on the underscores.
That's right. GamecockScoop.com is the website where Alan plies his trade every single day. All right. Some history made in professional basketball and the history of Carolina basketball. Where does it fit nationally? All those things coming up. How you watching what you watch? How you listening to what you listen to? Can you do it better? Yes, you can. You can, unless you've had integrated media in the house in like the last couple of weeks. And then this message isn't for you. Instead, it's for those of you who want the absolute best in home theater, knowing that it's done right the first time. Look, you can go into a big box store and you can see a giant television or some really cool speakers and say, I want that. And then you look at the guy at the big box store and say, come to the house and help me map out where all this is going to go. And then they're going to look at you like your dog looks at you when you don't want to do that, right? What are you talking about here? Integrated media makes house calls. The cost of the equipment is the exact same you're going to pay anywhere else. What you're getting is the expertise, all right, of Michael and Nathan and Evan and Philip and the whole crew. Awesome guys to be around, to work with. I love what they've done for me. People ask me all the time, do you really like that stuff? Yes, I do so much. 803-948-8327. The best in home theater from Integrated Media. 4 o'clock on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of the Postgame Show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia. Another rainy day. I was telling Elijah, we got that snow sky across the capital city today. Unfortunately, it's we got 45 degrees downtown. So if it was just 15, 17, 18 degrees cooler.
Getting some snow.
Man, you'd be
getting you some winter.
Some good snow.
Yeah.
Today was one of those days where you get some good snow. Unfortunately, we don't get that around here.
I'm in a group chat with a bunch of my buddies from back home, and of course, all of them but like one still live there.
Yeah.
It's like a group of like 8 of us, right? And 6 of them still live in the Middle Tennessee area, and someone dropped in a picture of what is forecasted like 2 weeks out, and it says like potential to be up to 20 inches of snow.
Oh my. I don't care where you live, that's too much.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. Like I remember like growing up, the biggest snow I remember was probably about 13.
Yeah.
Like 12, 13 inches.
That's a lot.
A smidge over a foot.
Yeah, if you get like
you're snowed in for a few days.
you get 2 inches of snow in
man.
Columbia, man. That's a blizzard.
You ain't going anywhere.
So anyway, couple of basketball things that we'll touch on throughout the course of the next little bit. And again, love to have you weigh in. We started a little bit of this conversation in the last hour, but I'm going to have Elijah now with a little more detail tell you where he saw this and kind of how we came up with the topic, because I think, especially right now, you're at another, not crossroads, but you're at another point in the program, not the team, but the program's history, where you got to kind of go, all right, what do we need to do? But give us the background on how this kind of came around.
Yeah, I found an interesting tweet while I was just scrolling on my phone, waiting for my pub sub last night, and I saw this tweet.
Ooh, which one'd you get, by the way?
Oh, chicken tender.
Okay.
Chicken tender with a little bit of mayonnaise, some lettuce, that little chipotle sauce they have on it, some oregano, get it toasted. Oh, pepper jack cheese too. Oh, heavenly. Highly recommend.
Well done, my man.
But it was a tweet from just, a random person. Says, having a discussion with someone, and I'm curious to get other opinions because it's a really good question. What's the worst high major job in college basketball? And I kind of equate, kind of like what Kevin Sweeney does, who writes for Sports Illustrated. He commented and he goes, quote, hardest high major to win at, end quote, in my eyes would be Stanford. Don't think people realize how much more stringent their academic standards are, or at least have been, compared to other high academics, elite quality of life job, though, especially with the included housing. And then I was like, okay, now I'm intrigued. Right now, there's some people whose opinions I highly value when it comes to like what places are hard to win at. And I started scrolling through a lot of these, and I was like, where would, because I don't like using the original poster's term of worst high major job.
Yeah.
Because that's so subjective. But there are harder places to win at, right? Any coach can make a job a good job or a bad job, right? But there are places that are easier to win at because of history, resources, facilities, money, all of that. And then there are places that are just harder to win, where you're just naturally at a disadvantage because of a lack of the other things the easier jobs have. And I've kind of wondered, where is South Carolina in the scope of how hard the job can be? And then I was thinking of like, I kind of grouped them with some other schools where it's really hard to win on a consistent basis. Schools like Penn State, like Nebraska, Northwestern's in a tier of its own because they didn't make an NCAA tournament till 2017?
Yeah.
So it's kind of in a tier of its own. Auburn, before Bruce Pearl, was in that position. You could put Georgia in that position.
Yep.
Really hard places to win because of strong football histories, high passion for football. But then I kind of made mentally a group of these type of schools where it could be hard to win. Southern Cal, if we want to use the West Coast. Washington, you can throw that in there as well. And I was like, how much of a head start does South Carolina have on these other schools right now? And I think there's some advantages they have, right? Like where you can win. I think it is almost impossible to win at Penn State. I think it's impossible to win at a high level at Nebraska. I think Fred Hoiberg is a phenomenal coach, and he's only gotten into the tournament once, and they ain't making it this year. I doubt they make it this year. They're kind of like, bubble hovering or bubble adjacent, but I don't think they're going to be a program, even with Fred Hoiberg, who I believe is the best coach they've ever had, that they are going to be a consistent NCAA tournament team. I just think it's too hard to win at Nebraska. I don't feel that way about South Carolina. I feel like you got really good fan support, which Penn State doesn't. I mean, I see videos all the time of what that arena looks like. A, the place is a dump. B, no one's there. Really hard to win. And they have a team that's at least exciting. They've underachieved this year because they have a decent roster. But what part of the facilities, the lack of support, all of that go into Penn State being, hopeless? But like South Carolina's not that. Nebraska at least gets a lot of fan support, and they have a really nice arena that they play in. Like Pinnacle Bank's a nice little arena. But like Washington
built for volleyball.
Yeah, built for volleyball. Yeah, really though. But in a place like Washington, like solid facilities, reasonable history, but they're in a talent-rich part of the country. So many great basketball players are in that Seattle, Pacific Northwest area, and they recruit well.
City.
And they recruit well. Relatively speaking, they do have good recruiting classes under different coaches. Mike Hopkins had good recruiting classes. Lorenzo Romar had really good recruiting classes, but it's never equated to a bunch of consistent high-level success. I think South Carolina actually, the more I thought about it, honestly, I think you still have a leg up on a lot of the schools that I would have originally grouped them in with.
I would say, without speaking for you or reading your mind, that you may come to the conclusion I do when you say the things you just said. Why aren't they better?
Yeah.
And that's again what makes me scratch my head, and I have for a long time, man. Because like I say, I grew up in a time when the adults in my life, whether those in my family or parents of friends, or and that extended network, I would say they were kind of 50-50 football, basketball back in the day, man. And the year before I was born, South Carolina won the championships of both sports in the ACC. So they were good at it, at least for a snap, right? And basketball was different than football. But like you mentioned, Penn State, you hit on the number one thing. That fan base, and I don't mean this like to rag on them, they don't care.
They don't, yeah.
It's just, it's never been their thing, know? I mean, basketball in the state of Pennsylvania is a Philadelphia thing, and there was a couple of years when Pitt was all right. But even Pitt doesn't really care that much about basketball. And you're just not getting the Philly kids to go to State College. They'll go to Temple. They'll go to LaSalle. They'll go to Nova,
They'll go to the Big Five schools that are in Philly, yeah.
And look, I mean, again, basketball in Philadelphia is fantastic. Right?
It's awesome.
And
yeah,
Philly,
the Big Five rules, man.
Yeah.
Getting to play at the Palestra would be an honor. It's one of those type of deals.
So it's not like the state, but the kids, and Penn State fans. And you hit on it. I think it's the same thing at Nebraska to some degree. It's like they like volleyball. You know what? Penn State loves volleyball.
And they're really good at it.
Yeah. And I'm not here, like, again, you like what you like.
Exactly.
Iowa likes football and wrestling. Penn State likes wrestling. South Carolina for years, baseball school, right? And now what Dawn's doing. And it's not like you don't love football. You love football. But Carolina fans do really like basketball. And South Carolina, Columbia is, we've talked about it generationally. Look at South Carolina's current best players. Colin is from Columbia. Mm-hmm. Gigi is from Columbia. I go back all the time. I don't care if I sound like old dude. George Felton's best teams, 4 starters from Columbia. Eddie's SEC title team, 4 starters from the state of South Carolina, including one from Columbia, but a bench that was primarily kids from South Carolina. Frank's teams, when they were at their best, a starter who played in the NBA from Columbia. Sindarius was from 45 minutes, an hour away north of us.
And like historically speaking, too, even in the state,
Devin Downey
before the one and done.
Yeah.
Before the one and done, there's a chance you could have maybe kept Kevin Garnett home, or you could have kept Jermaine O'Neal home, right? And I know both, Eddie Fogler probably felt very strongly that he was going to get Jermaine O'Neal.
I think they felt good about both for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. But then it's like, the rule wasn't in place where they had to go to college.
Right.
So they did what they honestly should have done and went to the NBA. And no one blames them one bit. But if the one and done rule was then you get those guys.
Probably
and that's high level talent. Kevin Garnett is a Hall of Fame player in the NBA.
Right. And I go back, even as I said, to my youth and Alex English, who went to high school 3 miles from not even 3 miles from where we're sitting right now in downtown Columbia. So,
talent rich.
You've got the talent. And if not, Charlotte, 90 minutes away. Atlanta, 3 hours away. Charleston has talent. That's an in-state thing, but I mean, you can do it. And I come back around, and I know we can bang our head against the wall until we need to go, see a concussion specialist about this. But, I'm not saying be North Carolina, I'm saying tell me what it is that the University of Tennessee has done. And it's not just Rick Barnes, because Tennessee's had some other iterations of pretty good basketball. Now, they had some misses, too.
Buzz Peterson.
Yeah. But, like Coach Green was all right for a little bit. And
Coach Green won him an SEC title.
Yeah, Coach Houston was okay. Maybe it's because of his son more than anything, but the son was really good.
Yeah.
And in the early 80s with like Bernard King and those guys, I mean, Tennessee had some moments. And I guess you could say Carolina has too. But like right now, there's not one person that would go, South Carolina could be just as good as Tennessee. Tennessee is way above Carolina as a program. And I just like, what? Why? Like what? And people will tell me sometimes, too, that there are forces that work against South Carolina in state from a talent standpoint. I don't know enough about those, is that myth? Is that half-truth? If so, what do you need to do to overcome it? Last hour, we had a caller say he hopes that the new athletics director, Jeremiah Donati, will ask some of those questions of Lamont or just of the community. And Jeremiah sat right here in this very room with you and me just a couple of weeks ago and said he would. That he had, last week he and Lamont did meet during the off week. I don't know what they talked about, and we may not be privy to that kind of stuff. And they'll have a more detailed and lengthy meeting or set of meetings when the season is over. But, I look at, and again, nothing I say here is to rag on any school, to ridicule any school or its fan base. But I joke a lot about Georgia. All right. I've said, Georgia's men's basketball program could just go away for 3 years. And eventually some fans are going to go hey, didn't we
dreamed this, right?
We had basketball, right? Right? They're like, nah, man, they did when Dominique was here. But that was, when my granddad was in school, or something like that.
Yeah, we have a basketball team here. We call them the Hawks, I guess. I don't know.
But it's Carolina's not the worst. And I don't, again, worst, you're right. Hardest is different. But, hard could be, look, I think Hubert Davis is finding it really hard right now. That's certainly not the worst job in the country.
No, absolutely not.
But Hubert's finding it hard. Tony Bennett found it hard. And ultimately he just said, I just don't want to do this. Hubert may not have a job next year because North Carolina just being okay is not good enough. That makes it hard. But for South Carolina, what are the biggest obstacles to overcome? And we'll come back on the other side. NCAA tournament appearances alone are not the measure of your program, but they are something that people care about. And so where
it makes money.
Yeah. Amongst Power 4 schools, Elijah and I have done a little look in here to give you an idea of where Carolina stacks up. And we can all measure a little bit about what that tells us and what Jeremiah Donati might want to do about it next in conjunction with Lamont. And again, weigh in on your thoughts on things like this. 803-404-6100. It's the Postgame Show. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you on this Wednesday. Carolina basketball coming your way tonight. We'll have some sound from Dawn Staley a little bit later on. Her team plays Florida tomorrow.
Be a good bounce-back game.
Should be. And, again, this weekend, LSU is at Texas and women's basketball. And Carolina fans, whether you want to or not, you got to pull for LSU.
Yep. If you desire your team to win the SEC regular season championship.
Just for a day, not even for a day, for a 2.5 hour period.
Yeah, that's it. That's all.
Not much to ask.
It would benefit them greatly for LSU to go in there and pull it out.
Yeah, but it's just for tiebreakers and all that. That's what you're looking for.
I would like them to be the number 1 seed. I would like for them to win the SEC regular season championship again.
That's right. So if those are things you want, or to start the tournament at noon instead of 10.
Not have to play either Texas or LSU in the semifinal.
Right, on Saturday. So anyway, we'll have that for you too. All right, talking Carolina men's basketball and just men's basketball in general from a perspective of something that Elijah saw last night. Just again a thought exercise. What's the worst Power 4 job? Now again, he and I agreed using the word worst is not what we are doing here because there's too much subjectivity in that. But how you measure programs, and we've, for those of you just tuning in, we've talked about how it just is puzzling to a lot of us, that South Carolina men's basketball isn't better because it is not due to a lack of resources. It is not due to a lack of the ability to get talent in the local area. It's not due to a fan base that doesn't care about the sport like some. And we've mentioned Penn State, Georgia, and Nebraska as fan bases on a relative sense that just don't care that much about basketball. And again, you don't have to it's if you don't, you don't. I don't. I'm not, again, no judgment.
Strokes for different folks.
No judgment. But so I went digging. It's not that hard to find these kind of things out. But just part of the measurement is NCAA tournament appearances. And let's face it, the best talent wants to go to a school in any sport where they feel like they've got great postseason opportunity. And that's perfectly fair. And is that part of it? Maybe, maybe not. Y'all tell me. And you'll hear some of the logic I'm going to use. The Power 4, I asked this earlier, by the way, so hopefully for those of you who were ethical about it and were just guessing schools, the Power 4, and I'm using current Power 4, all right? So no Big East, and Washington State and Oregon State, unfortunately, God bless you, not mentioned in this.
Klay Thompson ain't walking through that.
No. So it's current Power 4, SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. Northwestern has only been to the men's tournament 3 times, and they've done it all in the last 8 years.
The Chris Collins effect, and touching that ugly building that they had for a long time and actually putting in real seats.
Rutgers and Nebraska are next on the list, tied with 8 appearances apiece.
And Nebraska went 25 some odd years before Tim Miles took them back in 2014.
And there again, Rutgers, just like football, Rutgers is in a big state population-wise and near enough to other massive areas of basketball popularity. And yet,
And they have 2 guys on that team right now that will be top 5 picks in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
they're not, barring a miracle run in the Big Ten tournament, they will not be participating in the NCAA tournament.
But historically, 8 in the whole history of the tournament. Not just since whatever.
Since 1939.
Yes,
we
since
had
the
first
tournament started.
Tournament.
Mississippi, 9.
That's wild.
9. They'll be here
also
tonight.
makes sense.
And yet, if you asked that same 100 people I was talking about earlier, of basketball analysts and such, and those who cover the sport, Ole Miss, a great job, is it? I mean, I'm not. It's up to you, but and they're good right now. But are they good because of Chris Beard?
They're definitely good because of Chris Beard. I mean, and you look at what the standards are. I mean, for a long time, Andy Kennedy had that job from 2006. So he had that job for over 10 years, made 2 NCAA tournaments.
I'll say he only went a couple times.
Only went a couple
It
times.
feels like he went a bunch, but he
They
didn't.
never win a lot.
Yeah.
And, Marshall Henderson had a lot to
Bubble team
do
a
with
lot of
one
times,
those,
right?
yeah.
Like when Coach Greenberg was in Blacksburg, Michael Haney and I dubbed Virginia Tech back then America's bubble team because they were always right there.
Always on the
But
bubble.
they never. It was always typically on the wrong side. It felt like. So Ole Miss has been 9 times on a 4-way tie for Power 4 schools with 10 appearances: South Carolina, Minnesota, Georgia, and Penn State. And we mentioned Georgia and Penn State. Now with Minnesota, Minnesota's an interesting kind of school for a Big Ten school because it's in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, man. Vikings and Twins, back in the day, the old North Stars dominate that sports scene. And maybe kids that are good that live there, some go, some don't. I don't know. I mean,
It's a pro sports town.
yeah.
Same thing. One of the reasons why Vanderbilt will always have a hard time.
Yeah.
In the modern college landscape, garnering as much support in that town as they do.
So there again, but with Georgia and Penn State, again, this is not me judging. Those fan bases look at college basketball and go, yeah, I know it's a thing. But I don't feel South Carolina looks at it that way. I know they don't. Because I've been here. I've seen it. And I keep coming back around. For those of you who just tuned in, I keep coming back around. When Carolina won the SEC under Eddie Fogler with Melvin and BJ and Larry and all those guys, plans were instantly put in place after the season to start the new building. Like, hey, we got the support. We want this. Everybody wants this. Let's make it happen. And they did. Boom, done. Stegman was built when Lyndon Johnson was president.
It's an old building, man.
So anyway, so Carolina, Minnesota, Georgia, Penn State with 10. I think Carolina does. I can't say enough about Minnesota. I don't know enough about Minnesota. When Clem Haskins were there and they got slapped for a few things, they were good in the 90s. Again, that's when I bet my $20, Elijah.
Because they went to a Final Four.
7-1 odds.
Kevin McHale played there.
I
They've
lost.
had some guys that were really good players.
Kevin McHale ain't
come out of
walking through that door. Miami is next with 12, and Coach Larinaga has done a lot of that. Well, he's done now, but
Did.
yeah, they were good. Next, a line on with 13 visits: Mississippi State, Clemson, and Auburn. Auburn, I say only. Auburn's only been 13 times. Bruce Pearl's probably taken them to half of those.
I mean,
You can't do half of 13, but you know what I mean. But I mean,
look, even then, like when Bruce Pearl first got there,
but
that was
until
a massive
Bruce Pearl,
rebuilding job.
I would tell you, look, Cliff Ellis had a nice little run after he left Clemson. But they didn't do a lot under Cliff, and I like Cliff.
5 of the 13 appearances are Bruce Pearl.
Okay, there you go. Where Auburn is now, as the number 1 ranked team in America, is due almost exclusively to the hard work of Bruce Pearl. And then the winning gets that fan base to want to do more. But I wouldn't have said that Auburn is right now it's a, quote, better job perhaps than South Carolina, but that's because of Bruce Pearl. Look at what Bruce Pearl did at Tennessee. Could you say, hey, look at what Bruce did at Tennessee?
He never missed a tournament at Tennessee.
But Tennessee had some support there for it, and that's what I'm saying. But does Tennessee have more, quote, support in Knoxville or from administrators than South Carolina for basketball? They have a bigger building, but they only have a bigger building, as we've joked, because they wanted it to be bigger than Rupp, because they hate Kentucky so much.
Because of that pettiness, between the two of them.
Vanderbilt has 15 appearances. Colorado and Texas A&M have 16. And I kind of just drew a line. You start to get into more, and y'all see the point, and then we can keep going. And Colorado, more than a lot of the – does Colorado still have a basketball team?
They're the only winless team in the Big 12 right now.
I mean –
So they might not a good year.
So I just – we're not going to solve the problems of the program today, but what's the missing piece? When you look at some of these other schools, again, most people might say, again, when I say most people, those that follow the sport for a living would tell you Mississippi State's probably an easier job, not necessarily a better job, to get some talent and win. It feels like it is, and yet they only have 3 more appearances historically than South Carolina. Clemson. If you had asked me earlier, I told you, Elijah, I'd have said, I don't know, Clemson's probably been around 20. It just felt like they might know. Only 3 more appearances than South Carolina. Again, I don't know. I scratch my head sometimes. I'm like, I'm just not sure I don't know what the worst one is, what the hardest one is. I don't know. I'm with you. I've always said Penn State, man. Because those people don't care. And that, to me, is the biggest obstacle to overcome. And that's never been a problem at the University of South Carolina. 803-404-6100. You're listening to the Postgame Show. The Joint Chiropractic Center is ready to help you out when you're waking up in the morning and you feel a little stiff. You got to do a little bit better, right? Now, I get into the Joint real soon here. Their goal, very simple, improve the overall health of their patients with affordable, convenient chiropractic care. If you've been bothered by back, neck, shoulder, or joint pain, they are ready to help you out. You never need an appointment. You heard me right. You never have to worry about insurance. You heard me right. They are FSA and HSA approved. They're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, and Saturdays, 10 until 4. Where are they, you ask? You're interested now, right? Harbison Boulevard, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, and Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. Local owners Janet and Bob Keene been around a long time. They just want to help you out and make you feel better. And the Joint has centers all across the nation. So once you're in the system, you're out for vacation, sports, work, whatever, you can stop into any center. They'll hook you up. Remember, at the Joint, you don't have to feel bad to feel better.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways. Thankfully, only 3 of them. One in Lexington County on US 321 near Pine Ridge Drive, one on Hardscrabble Road near Summit Parkway, and lastly, one on Decker Boulevard. That's going to be near Percival Road.
Welcome back in. Jade Elijah with you here on this Wednesday afternoon, talking a little Carolina hoops from an historical perspective and college hoops in general. If you want to weigh in, we'll check in on the text line in just a little bit and get some of what you guys have had to say. We'll get into a little bit from Elijah on tonight's game. Speaking of Ole Miss coming in, will they get to their 10th NCAA tournament this year? Probably.
Yeah, they're in.
Probably.
They're in. I think the win at Alabama, if they were a bubble team, the win at Alabama alone would carry a ton of weight. Not many teams have gone into Coleman and won.
Yeah. In the meantime, I wanted to get into a little bit more with what happened last night for KD. Congratulations to Kevin Durant. He becomes just the 8th player in the history of the association to score 30,000 points. He's now at 30,008. Again, reminds me of that Eddie Murphy bit, you know. Hey, Johnny, I made $30 at the boutique this weekend. Now we have $100 million and $30. But nah, he's in. Elijah and I had fun this morning trying to figure out. We got, what do we get, 5 of the other 7?
6.
We got 6.
I had a guess in my head, but I didn't look it up, so I wasn't 100% sure.
All right. And I kept saying Wilt, but I wasn't sure. So I guess we got, I'll count that for me, too. I'm going to give myself that one.
Yeah.
There, I just did.
I think cumulatively we got all of it.
We did, because you had Dirk.
I had Dirk. I
was like, I think Wilt. But we didn't want to, like, cheat. We sometimes when we do that, you and I have started doing that, like, well, let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, we're pushing ourselves.
Yeah, you gotta see. So as it stands now, LeBron James keeps adding to his total. LeBron, by the way, is in a club of 1.
But he will keep forever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to keep that forever.
LeBron is well over 41,000 now. Kareem is 2nd. Karl Malone 3rd. Kobe 4. Jordan 5. Dirk is 6th. Wilt Chamberlain 7. KD is number 8. Shaq, by the way, is number 9. And Carmelo Anthony is 10. Shaq at 28,596. Melo at 28,289. Top active player beyond KD, of course, is James Harden at 26,931. And Russ is actually next, 21st all-time, 25,834 for Russell Westbrook, who is still on a team. I don't know what he's doing for Denver right now, but I know he
participates.
I know he dresses.
He comes off the bench and he participates.
He dresses out every night.
He's very good at participating.
Stephen Curry is at number 27 all-time at 24,694. Don't think Steph is going to hit the 30K club, huh?
Don't think so. He had for a while some issues with his ankle that caused him to miss a lot of time early in his career. And then he missed a full season right after COVID because of an injury. I think that was the 2021-22 season, I believe.
What, do you have, a knee?
Had a knee issue.
Yeah.
So he missed some time. Fun fact with Kevin Durant, out of all the players that have reached that benchmark, he has played the least amount of career minutes than all of them. Only 2 of those guys, of those 8 that you mentioned, are outside the top 10 in career minutes played.
Wow.
That is KD at 37th all time, and then Carmelo Anthony at 26th. Only 2 guys on that list to not be in the top 10 in career minutes.
And KD, he averages for his career 27.3 a game. He's got 2 good seasons left in him.
Maybe more, because he's such an effortless scorer. I mean, if you manage his minutes right, then you can get him right for a couple more years. I think he's got some more left in him, and of course it helps that he came right out of his 1 year at Texas.
Yes.
So he's a little older, but like it's not like he labors for a lot of his buckets, right? He's one of those guys that he's a sniper from anywhere on the floor. That's going to help his longevity a little bit.
And I think, and he's a pretty complete player. I wouldn't say he's an elite defender.
Not anymore. Once was.
Yeah.
I would say in the mid 20 teens, you could say he was the best on-ball defender in the NBA.
Yeah, and he likes doing it. I think that's one of the things. That's what I loved about Jordan.
Yeah.
And look, I used to think Kobe was not, and then I realized, you know what? Kobe was a really good defender, but like Jordan loved it. I think Jordan loved defending as much as he loved scoring, but I think that comes from that old Dean Smith kind of a thing. But LeBron loves to defend.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so many of these guys. I mean, look, Kareem, you know, the old joke on the airplane, right? You tell your old man to drag Lanier up and down the court. But you know, Kareem could block some shots. Now, Kareem's not going to. But Kareem played in a different era. Like he just needed to guard the big.
Right, and stay in the paint and block shots.
Block shots, just and grab a board.
No one was dragging Kareem out to the perimeter to guard anybody.
Yeah.
Game wasn't played that way.
But my point being, KD is a complete player. Some guys, you know, look, I'm not. You'd have to tell me. I don't know. Does Harden? I've never thought of him as a great defender.
Oh no, it's optional. He's one of those defense optional.
Russell Westbrook.
Russell's a good,
does he
good
defend?
defender.
Okay.
Takes a lot of risks. That's always been the caveat with him.
Did you say risks or shots?
Both. Our buddy Michael on the YouTube comment streams, he's, why don't people like Westbrook? He hustles more than anyone every night, which he does. I mean, like Russell Westbrook, the effort is never the question with him. I think it's the shot selection.
Yeah, he'll shoot all the time.
It's just the shot selection with him that I think rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
My thing with a guy like Russ is, and again, this is from my vantage point of what I watch. So those of you who watch more, you may feel differently, and that's fine. I feel like Russell Westbrook, I got no problem with any player believing he's awesome. You should.
Yes.
But when you stop for a second and think about it, Russell Westbrook shouldn't ever be the best player on the team. He's a great he's a number 2 or a number 3. Like, I feel like that's what he needs to provide. But I think for a while in certain stops in his career, you know, I'm the best player on the team.
Or should be taking the last shot. I think that's one of those things, too.
Yeah, you know, like, I'm just not sure he's that guy.
Maybe there's not a self-awareness with the shot selection, too.
But he's certainly good. Listen, I've said him and Harden, to me, those are guys that you pay money to go see them shoot and score. But, you know, in terms of providing you with someone who's really going to be a difference maker when it matters, which is in May and into June, I've never really seen it. That's
there's too many wasted possessions. Sometimes that adds up, and that was always kind of his issue when he played anywhere, even at the tail end of Oklahoma City, especially. And that's one of the reasons why, no matter the monster numbers he put up his MVP year, they got into the playoffs, and it came time to having to hit a lot of tough contested shots when defenses tighten up a little bit, and he just probably took too many of them because that's just he's not a great jump shooter. Never been a great jump shooter in his career. Always good at getting to the rim. It's always harder to get to the rim when playoff time rolls around.
Real quick, I got a text from my good friend John Folsom, who asks, where is Alex English on the all-time list? Glad you asked. Alex ranks number 23 all-time with 25,613 points. Of course, in the Hall of Fame. Still don't know how Alex wasn't one of the top 50 players when they did that list.
I know, man.
I just don't get that because he is. But what, you know, there's a few guys.
He's definitely like a top 20 scorer in the history of this league.
If I'm not mistaken, help me out. I think I should know this, that he was the leading scorer of the decade of the 1980s.
That sounds about right.
I think that's right. Or at least like right, you know, because I don't know. It's pretty close. But top 25 all time, Johnny. Thank you for asking. Alex English, number 23. Of course, in the Hall of Fame, but and has been for a long, long time.
And still top 30 when you account for ABA players.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scoring done in there.
Telling you, man, a couple years ago at CLA, it was awesome. Alex was there. I've probably told this before. Alex was there, and there was a kid. Alex was sitting like where my family sits. We sat like kind of behind the Carolina bench and a few rows up, kind of near that, just over from the corner. Anyway, Alex was down behind the bench, and there was a kid in like that old school '80s Alex English Nuggets jersey, like the rainbow, like all that.
Sick jerseys, man.
Awesome,
beautiful. Yeah,
and the kid was kind of sheepish and went down. And Alex signed the jersey. And I was like, yes. Like, I want to do that so bad. I don't know how the kid's like 10, 12, maybe. I'm not sure. But I was like, you go, kid. And Alex was like,
just having the jersey. Yeah, that is an awesome get.
But signed. I was like, that is awesome. Good stuff. All right. Lots more to do here on the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our second hour. Coming up top of the hour, headlines of the day. Got a few college football notes to get to and some NFL stuff. We'll do that for you in just a little bit. Jay and Elijah here, and then Elijah will break down tonight's opportunity for South Carolina men's basketball to end the 10-game losing streak.
That's right. It can't potentially. There's a pathway for them to be able to do it tonight.
Make it make sense, man. 4-point combined losses to Auburn and Florida.
And then you went on the road to Vanderbilt, which has been a tough place to play for some of the nation's best teams. Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, and isn't one of the nation's best teams. They went there and got completely smacked up.
Yep.
A lot of teams have had trouble at Memorial this year. And
Auburn
if you
did
didn't turn the ball over at a historic rate, you would have won that game.
That Auburn game last night, I finally switched over to the Tennessee-Kentucky game, which was better. I know we have a drive around coming up still, but Auburn scored like the first
15
points. Then Vandy took a 6-point lead, 7-point lead.
Mm-hmm. Then they led for a little bit, and
Auburn ended up winning by double digits. Auburn was like, all right, that's enough.
Chaney Johnson had 20 points off the bench, man.
Yeah, it was a good game. But Tennessee-Kentucky game was good. We'll talk about those in the drive around coming up. Couple of hits on the text line you want to get to?
Yeah,
okay.
And as it pertains to, talking about where South Carolina can get out of the neighborhood of the programs that they currently sit in when it comes to all-time NCAA tournament appearances. Jacob hits us on the text line and says there are definitely folks in the South Carolina AAU realm that actively work against South Carolina. Kerry Rich has and will help immensely with that. But in the last decade, there have been multiple local, in parentheses, Columbia specifically, kids that haven't even considered playing for the Gamecocks, and there were certain people that were very close to them and that are unapologetically anti-Carolina, and they are not hard to find on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be honest. Even if I'm always been a local, that I don't follow that scene, but I don't get that. I know. Look, for one thing, I'm not a huge fan of the AAU stuff to begin with. I think it's so manipulative, and I think there's a lot of people in that realm that are in it for them, not for the kids they coach or help. But I don't get that. Like, why would you, if you live here? You don't have to be a fan. You don't have to be an alum. But why would you actively work to tear something down?
Right.
What happened? Like, did somebody steal your girlfriend? Like,
right.
what are we like? What are we doing here? Like, what's the point of doing that? I don't. Look, if a kid wants to go somewhere else, that's cool. A lot of times I'll say that too. If you're from a place, maybe you want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, or have dreams of going somewhere. Yeah,
have at it. You want to get away from home for the first time. Have at it. That's cool. I got no issue there. But if somebody just says, "Oh, you don't want to go there," well, why? Or I don't like them. Why? What'd they do to you? Like, I don't get that. And I've heard that before. So Jacob's not the first time that someone's ever told us that. It just that doesn't make sense to me. So again, I'll ask you, Elijah, rhetorically. Make it make sense. I don't. Again, why work actively to tear something down where you're from?
Right. I think it's another, and to the texter's point too, I think that's a really good role that Kerry Rich fills, is to maintain positive relationships with not just high school coaches in the area, but AAU coaches that have players both in the state of South Carolina and North Carolina. I
mean, I would have to think that there's a lack, and hear me out, a lack of money involved or something to that. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Right.
I truly don't. So I'll be careful, but that doesn't make sense to me.
Interesting angle here. This is from Ed. Ed says problem for USC is shoe contract, drop Under Armour.
Yeah, that could be an issue. But before Under Armour, Carolina wore Nikes the whole time.
Yeah,
and I don't know that I'd like to think that is some type of thing.
I think it maybe used to have more of an issue now than what it is, currently, because of NIL and everything. A lot of times, as we know, and as the FBI helped uncover,
right,
that shoe deals and shoe companies dictated a lot of where some of the higher profile players in the country went.
Yeah.
And obviously in that realm, Nike and Adidas rule.
I just, Auburn wears Under Armour. Texas Tech, when Chris Beard took them to the title game, wore Under Armour. I'm not
a total hindrance.
Yeah,
but.
I'm not denying that that's a thing, but again, it seems to be something that a school in Auburn, Alabama, and Lubbock, Texas, overcame.
Yeah, exactly. I think what effect it has, I would say minimal in 2025, but
I get it.
That,
I mean, I get it.
I certainly get the angle. Yeah.
Well, and I think the first
what we
year
know now about how how the recruiting in those circuits goes on.
I think the first year that Carolina was under the Under Armour deal, the basketball team got like a waiver, if you will, for lack of a better word, to keep wearing Nikes for one more year because they just plain hated the shoes.
Right.
I think they've gotten better since then. But
Nike's the best, superior.
It's a fun topic. We'll get into some more of those things. I say fun. It's certainly one that I think we can all engage in an effort to see where the better things are. Headlines of the day are coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with some stop-and-go traffic. Looks like it's not accident-related, but some stop-and-go traffic is an issue on 26 westbound between Sunset Boulevard near exit 110 and St. Andrews Road near exit 106. We have an accident on Decker Boulevard near Percival Road, Hardscrabble Road near Summit Parkway, Killian Road at South Carolina 555 at Farrow Road, Monticello Road and Highway 215 at Blue Ridge Terrace, Parkland Road at Highway 277, Trotter Road near Traveler Lane, US 176 at Broad River Road, and lastly, one on US 321 near Pine Ridge Drive.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Final hour of the postgame show as well. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Reminder, Carolina men's basketball coming your way in just a little bit. 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock tip. Gamecocks hosting Mississippi. We'll have a breakdown of that one coming up in just a little bit. Carolina looking to end its 10-game conference losing streak. Ole Miss, meanwhile, amongst those in the top 25 and looking for a bid to the NCAAs. This would be a good win for Carolina in the sense that you could finally get one, and could be damaging to Ole Miss to lose to. Would this be a quad 2 loss?
I believe it would be. Yeah, just because the criteria for quad 2 on the road is anyone from 76 in net to 135 in net, and South Carolina sitting firmly at 90 in the net rankings.
Okay. I thought they were in the 90s, so at number 90. Meanwhile, last night here on Carolina Calls, Dawn Staley spoke about what happened on Sunday in Austin. Cut number 6, please, Elijah Campbell. Here's Coach on seeing, speaking of streaks, their 57-game conference regular season streak snapped.
Texas disrupted us. I thought we had a really good game plan in knowing that they were going to make entry passes hard. We just couldn't execute it. And I think early foul trouble really impacted our ability to defend the way we needed to defend. Because psychologically it does have an impact. If Sanaya Fagan gets 2 fouls, she can't be as aggressive, and quite honestly, she just played conservatively, and we're not a conservative defensive team. And when you're able to get us to do that, it just creates so many other problems. Tina Pau picked up 2 early fouls, so you don't want to get in your gap help because you just don't want to put yourself in a position to pick up another foul. So I think we just impacted by the fouling situation and their ability to make each pass really hard for us to just get into any fluidity from an offensive standpoint.
Carolina has Florida tomorrow night. We'll have more on that one for you coming up on tomorrow's program. Meanwhile, continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, big news in college football. If I can get my computer to cooperate with me here. Matt Patricia, according to multiple sources, Matt Patricia, the former longtime Patriots assistant, y'all know him, to do with the pencil over the ear and the big beard, and not a very successful head coach at Detroit, is now in line to become defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Now, Pete Thamel reporting this afternoon that it corresponds with Ryan Day promoting secondary coach Tim Walton to the role of co-defensive coordinator, and that safeties coach Matt Guerreri will become pass game coordinator. I don't know that I've ever heard of a coach defending the pass game becoming the pass game coordinator.
That's an interesting angle.
Look, I get that a lot of catchers become good pitching coaches, but that's not the same. That's not apples to apples, but I don't know. That's interesting. But Matt Patricia coming to college. Look, great under Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick was his own defensive coordinator. and called most of the defenses. And Patricia, I like him. Fun character.
Yeah.
Never
met a number 2 pencil he didn't like.
Right. I guess this is good. I don't know. I just does he college? Can you recruit?
That's another big thing
because recruiting matters, and Ohio State's usually good at it.
Which I guess it's one of those things too. Maybe just the name will sell itself.
Could be
the amount of money they can give players will sell itself.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, because I don't know that he's ever, certainly not in the last 20 years, coached in college. So that's an interesting one. But again, I come back around to it. A guy who stops the pass is going to be the pass game coordinator. Jim Knowles, of course, was Penn State's Ohio State's defensive coordinator. He left for Penn State just a couple of weeks ago. Let's see. 2012 to 2017, Matt Patricia was the Patriot DC. Let's see. He began calling defensive plays without the title in 2010, according to this. A device, this says here, I'm reading verbatim, a device Bill Belichick used to break in new coordinators and keep pressure off them. You can call the defense, but you just can't be the defensive coordinator. Look, we'll see. We'll see. He spent 3 seasons with Detroit. He was 13, 29, and 1 as head coach. It does not say here that he ever has coached in college. It's a good gig.
It's a good gig. That's a hell of a gig to get for your first college.
But again, the recruiting angle, I bet he's a good people person, and maybe he's just a closer, like you said, and he'll flash a couple of Super Bowl rings and kids like that.
They do, yeah. They would like one of those one day.
So we'll see. But they got big shoes to fill. Knowles was good, man.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. I mean, what he did against some really good offenses is really impressive.
Apparently just maybe didn't have the greatest relationship with the head coach. It happens.
A lot of clashing, a lot of egos in a room like that. Yeah, absolutely. That's not uncommon.
Continuing our integrated media headlines of the day. We mentioned it earlier in the program, but if you just tuned in, congratulations to Kevin Durant. He becomes the 8th player in the history of the NBA to go over 30,000 career points. Those ahead of him, obviously, LeBron James at number 1, who is in a club of 1 with more than 40,000. Kareem is second at 38,387. Karl Malone third, 36,928. There will be a test later. Kobe Bryant fourth, 33,643. Michael Jordan fifth, 32,292. Dirk Nowitzki, 31,560 in sixth. Wilt is in seventh, 31,419. And again, KD now. Just the 8th all-time at 30,008, averaging 27.3 points per game. Elijah, we were talking earlier, you got a couple of good seasons left in him, so, you start to do some of that math, and he should be able to get past maybe Jordan and Kobe. Malone's more than 3,000 points ahead of Kobe. And then Kareem is about 1,500 points, not quite, ahead of Malone. So, but I can see Durant, if he stays near this pace for a couple of more years, he could get top 5, man.
Certainly.
I think that probably becomes a goal.
Probably. And I think that would accurately describe, somebody who is arguably the most gifted all-around scorer we've maybe ever seen in the sport. Yeah. At least in terms of efficiency, how he can get to the rim, how elite he was in mid-range. Like, look, the mid-range shot isn't totally dead if you're one of the elite players at it. Like, there may be 5 or 6 players that can shoot high volume from those areas and it still be as efficient as shooting a three-pointer. Kevin Durant's one of those players. Oh, and he has had plenty of years where he was a high volume and highly efficient three-point shooter.
If you're wondering, by the way, just round out the top 10, Shaq is number 9, 28,596. Carmelo Anthony in 10th, 28,289. But congratulations to KD. And if you're also wondering real quick, actively speaking, James Harden, number 14 at 26,931. Russell Westbrook is 21st all-time at 25,834. Stephen Curry is 27th all-time at 24,694. So don't know that Steph gets to 30K.
Probably not.
Russ, probably not either. Harden, maybe? That's still 3,000 points to get, man. That's...
Yeah, and it's not like he's getting the lion's share of shots at, where he's at.
Yeah. How long has he been in the league? This is 16 years? My God, really?
Yeah. James Harden was in that, 2008 class?
Yeah, I think so.
Same one where Blake Griffin went number 1 overall.
Wow. I'm old. He's old.
I think Steph was in that class too. Yeah, Steph. Same draft
Steph,
class.
let's see. Steph. Yep. Good call.
Johnny Flynn taken before him.
There you go.
Minnesota Timberwolves took 2 point guards before Steph Curry.
Speaking of the NBA, I'm not going to get into the whole 2-round mock draft or anything like that for you, but today, who was it again? Help me out, Elijah. Jonathan Givony.
Jonathan Givony from ESPN.
Jeremy Woo have their 2-round mock out, and they've got Colin Murray Boyles going number 18 to the Miami Heat, and it's a good report on him. When I read this, I texted Elijah. I'd seen it. Told Elijah it was not a very glowing review of Carolina basketball. It says he's an excellent passer. That's Colin. He's an excellent passer whose unselfishness and smarts are somewhat wasted on a disappointing South Carolina team currently 0-10 in the SEC, making for a problematic evaluation from a team context standpoint. Murray Boyles won't be a fit for every NBA team. He's undersized and lacks perimeter shooting, and they give his percentages, and is a little stuck between positions with some questions to answer about how he scores at the NBA level as a skilled but unconventional big. Talking about him as a role guy, not so much a guy who's going to be a starting 5 type, at least initially speaking. I can't possibly believe that he's going to stay for a third year and work on those things.
No.
And B, how fluid are things like this in terms of where he may actually go? I mean, he's going to be a guy that someone sees as a fit. I think they're right about that. This is not a complete, hey, just take him and we'll figure it out kind of talent.
Who's the player that Jonathan Givony at the very top of the write-up compared him to?
Draymond Green?
Draymond Green doesn't need to score the ball, or doesn't need to score 20 points in a game to be.
No, but Draymond Green starts and has his pretty much whole career, right? I'm not saying
without being an incredible scorer,
right?
And that also, if Draymond Green started his career with the Detroit Pistons, he would not be what he is right now, right? It takes fit, and Colin's gonna be one of those players where it will take fit. And if he goes to Miami, where there's a good culture in place and they're able to surround him with shooters. Colin can get in that rotation as a defensive player who can guard a bunch of different positions, who is an unselfish player, a great passer, who works very well, who could work very well in that offense, see what Bam Adebayo does in that offense. No reason for Colin not to be able to play a lot of those Bam-like roles and get minutes when Bam's on the bench. I think that would be a really good basketball fit for Colin.
Finally, in our integrated media headlines of the day, from sports to pop culture, which we do a lot of, the nominees for this year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame have been announced earlier today.
Big day for Jay Phillips.
It is, man. Cyndi Lauper finally made the list. To be eligible, an artist or band must have released its first commercial recording at least 25 years prior to nomination. Amongst this year's new nominees are... in alphabetical order, Bad Company, who's been around for almost 50 years. The Black Crowes, been around a long time. South Carolina's own Chubby Checker. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Andrews, South Carolina. The great Joe Cocker has never been nominated until this year. Billy Idol. Manya. I don't know who that is. Sorry. Outkast. All right.
Nice.
Yeah, I love Outkast. And... Fish.
All right.
Has finally been nominated, man. I don't know who Manya is, but everybody else needs to get in.
Like mind your own business, buddy.
Yeah. Now Cyndi Lauper is still there, and there's a few others, but these are the first year folks. I think. Let's see. Mariah Carey is on the list again. Cyndi Lauper. Oasis. Oasis isn't in. White Stripes aren't in yet? Well, maybe they shouldn't be.
I was
in
going to say
yet.
that you probably need more years for White Stripes to get a nomination.
Jack White had a big role on the SNL music documentary that I mentioned earlier.
Yes,
he can play.
He can shred.
Yeah, he can play. But y'all check that out, by the way. The SNL music documentary about the 50-year anniversary. It's awesome. It is. I'm telling you, it is so well done. But here's the hoping the boys get in, man. Fish deserves
I like their chances.
Fish deserves to get in. There you go. All right, good stuff. We'll come back on the other side of the break. That's our integrated media headlines of the day. Elijah will break down tonight's opportunity for the Gamecocks against Ole Miss. This is the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. It's the Postgame Show here on a Wednesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. A couple of things to tell you about real quick. First off, our Gamecock Traditions over-under contest. You can find it at 1075thegame.com. I don't know who our local odds maker is. It's not me. But this week, he or she has chosen the over-under 1.5 Ethan Petrie home runs versus Sacred Heart.
And it's for the whole weekend.
You should have put, Broken Hearts this weekend or something. No, that's mean.
Oh, see, that one's, infinite.
No, anyway, you could win a Gamecock Traditions gift card if you are the winner. Over-under 1.5 Ethan Petrie homers in the opening series. By the way, a little bit later on this hour, we're going to give you a chance to win tickets to Sunday's game. And then you're just going to need to really, 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 really hope that 90% chance of rain thing.
Do your anti-rain dance, whatever that may be.
Because Sunday across really the southeast does not look good. I saw our buddy Ryan McGee tweeting out that the forecast for Daytona, because they got a race down there on Sunday apparently. One of those big ones. I kid.
One of those big ones.
I'm not kidding about the race, but apparently the forecast for the 500 is a 60% chance of showers.
Don't love it. Don't love it.
Now the temperature's nice down there. It's like 80 degrees, but I mean,
doesn't do you any good if it's raining.
You ever been to that track?
I've driven by it,
man,
but I've never gotten to go in it.
I've never been to a race there, but I got to go to time trials when I was doing a sportscaster's workshop down in Daytona. We got to go around it and do stuff. We didn't get to drive it, but we got to walk in places where typically on a race day or something you would not get, but there were cars going by and stuff. We got to talk to the late great Davey Allison, who was amazing. But the banking, I had no idea. You don't appreciate. I know other tracks have that kind of banking, but at Daytona, because it's so big, it almost felt like it was straight up, man, on those turns. But that was pretty cool. But anyway, good luck. Go to 1075thegame.com. Gamecock Traditions over-under contest. In the meantime, Carolina Ole Miss men's basketball tonight, and this is where we give Elijah the opportunity to tell us what's up. I'll just start him off by saying that the matchup predictor, the BPI on the interwebs, gives South Carolina a modest 32.4% chance to win tonight's game against a top 20 opponent in the Ole Miss Rebels. So that leads me into where the EBPI feels this game is tonight.
Kind of giving South Carolina 37%.
All right, so even better.
Higher, a little higher than the BPI.
Yeah.
This is the
fake one.
Potential, the fake one. Yeah, the imposter, really. They try to replicate the EBPI, but to no avail. But the thing with this matchup that would be good for South Carolina's standpoint is if you can get a lot of clear open threes, especially in the corners, which you have some guys that are capable of making those, you're going to have a chance to knock down some shots. And the team shoots better at home. They have shot significantly better at home than they do on the road. And Ole Miss will give up a higher volume of threes because defensively they pack the paint in. They run a heavy no middle defense. They don't let you dribble into the middle of the floor at will or pass the ball into the middle of the floor at will. It's somewhat similar to what Mississippi State does, but with a lot less trapping in the corners. Mississippi State's maybe more aggressive as it pertains to trapping, but they're equally as good at jumping passing lanes, and this Ole Miss defense does force a ton of turnovers, but they can be susceptible to giving up open three-point looks, especially in the corners. They give up a higher volume of corner threes than most teams in Division I college basketball do.
Is that a byproduct of something else? It's not. I wouldn't say. Is that, for lack of a better way to ask it, by design? They want you to shoot that to go rebound it?
It's a natural kind of thing. So when you're guarding another team and you have an emphasis on taking away one thing, you will naturally give up something else because you sell out to stop certain things, right? Like they are well above average in terms of fewer shots taken in the paint and not, the rim. They are also one of the best in the country, at avoiding shots at the rim. Only about 27.8% of their opponents' shots are at the rim, and that's well over 3% below what the Division I average is. Because they play a harsh no-middle defense, they will help from the baseline a lot on baseline drives. So they want to push you to the baseline and then make you kick it out. They don't want you to get the ball in the middle of the floor. All Chris Beard's defenses, that's kind of been a staple of it. And in doing so, a lot of teams that to try to combat that will try to drive baseline and have shooters move to where the driver came from, which is usually the three-point line or the corner. Right? Sometimes when the help comes from the baseline, that help defender was guarding whoever's in the corner. So that will naturally, in an effort to not let you shoot the ball near the rim or get into the paint, will move help defenders from previous spots, which oftentimes against this team, it comes from the corner three-pointer or the above the break three-pointer. And that's why 87% of Ole Miss's opponents' three-pointers this year are assisted, because it's a lot of drive and kick. 87% of three-pointers made against Ole Miss this year are assisted. So South Carolina's got to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to making accurate passes.
Yeah.
We know they know to make the right passes. That's never been the issue. It's always delivering them accurately. So when you read on that drive, if you're able to kick it out to an open shooter and put it in the shooting pocket, not throwing it too high or have to jump and get it, because then you're easily recoverable and the shot can be contested. It's got to be in the shooter's pocket and good enough cleanly to be able to catch and shoot. And that is when you look at a lot of the games that South Carolina's been competitive in this year, against your Floridas, against your Auburns, Mississippi State, towards the last 10 minutes of the game, you are able to make catch and shoot threes. Those catch and shoot threes opportunities will be more abundant tonight than they have been. My biggest hang up is that Ole Miss is second in the SEC, very highly ranked in the country in terms of forcing turnovers. And offensively, they are the best in the country at avoiding turnovers. Less than 13% of their possessions end in a turnover. Again, number one nationally.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose the turnover battle. They don't rebound particularly well on the offensive side of the ball. They're prone to giving up a lot of rebounds and losing the battle on the glass. They're not elite at getting to the free throw line. If there's anything South Carolina does offensively better than their SEC peers, it's getting to the free throw line at a high rate. So in terms of the four factors of winning basketball games, you're going to lose the turnover battle. I think that's a given. You're going to lose that one, but you can win the offensive rebound percentage battle, and you can win the free throw rate battle. And if you take advantage of the catch and shoot three opportunities you get, you can win the effective field goal percentage battle, which wins you games about 75% of the time if you win three of those four.
All right. On the note of scoring and shooting and things like that, we saw Cam Scott play 18 minutes the other night. I think he'd been averaging, 3?
Yeah, that was by far the most minutes he's gotten in a game at SEC play.
I know we got limited time before a break here, but taking everything you just said and what the offense could look like, assuming to some degree that he plays roughly the same amount of minutes, maybe that's what Lamont is looking for. What does that do to this offense?
What it could do to this offense is, because Cam does have a quick first step,
right,
and when in high school he was great at driving to the basket. He's a really good athlete. That first step can potentially shift Ole Miss's defenses a little bit, or have him be one of those guys that whenever Jamari or Jacoby, whoever is Colin, whoever is trying to drive baseline and turn that corner, he can be one of those guys that can maybe spot up. Like, I know he's a 15% three-point shooter this year, but watching him play,
limited opportunities.
Exactly. And watching him play this year, or not this year, in the past, and whether it be in the AAU circuit or in high school, he's a much better shooter than that. He's got a good form. He will eventually positively regress to what his normal average would be. He's going to have to hit shots, because if he plays in this game tonight, he will get some opportunities from three. It's going to be on him tonight to knock him down.
Be interesting to see. 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock tip. We'll have it for you here. Many of you will be heading out that way shortly. Coming up on the other side, drive around the SEC. We wouldn't have been surprised by any of the outcomes last night, but in the end, there was no real surprises at all. And Josh Pate has ranked the top 10 SEC football programs. We'll give you that in the drive around the SEC. That's next. How you doing your banking these days? What if I told you could keep more of your money in your accounts simply by switching over to Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union? You see, as a not-for-profit institution, their earnings are returned directly to members in the form of lower rates and fewer fees. So if you're borrowing, hey, take advantage of lower rates, especially in this environment. And fewer fees, yeah, when you're keeping your money there, checking, savings, whatever it might be, they're not charging you as much as the big banks do. That's pretty simple math, in my opinion. Whether it's a checking account, savings account, car loan, student loan, home loans, equity lines of credit, you name it, money for almost any reason, they can get it done for you. And they're all local. They've been here since the 1930s. They know the area. They'll get to know you. My wife and I have been members for a few years now. We love them. They got 14 convenient locations and a great website, too. Learn more right now for any and all of your banking needs. Check out palmettocitizens.org.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to get to you. They're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with some significant stop traffic. I don't know if that is accident-related or not. Doesn't clarify, but that's going to be on 26 westbound between Sunset Boulevard near exit 110 and St. Andrews Road near exit 106. Other traffic backups as a result of accidents are in Killian Road at South Carolina 555 at Farrow Road, Monticello Road at Highway 215 at Blue Ridge Terrace, Parkland Road at Highway 277, Summit Parkway at Ridge Trail Drive, Trotter Road near Traveler Lane, and on US 176 at Broad River Road at Kennerly Road.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Wednesday. Jay and Elijah with you. Appreciate you being with us. We'll start with basketball. Last night, Alabama, no problem with the Texas Longhorns.
Oh, they were spraying it from beyond the arc, man. My God.
It was ugly in the first half. Didn't get much better for UT. 103-80. the final score from Austin. Florida, no real problems with Mississippi State last night. Decent game for a bit, and then Florida said, let's play some defense and score some points.
And did so without, I would say, their second most important player. Alex Condon left the game in the first minute with an ankle injury, did not return, and they were still able to win.
I didn't see anything more on him today.
I haven't. No update.
I don't know if Florida gave one. Maybe we don't get one until they have to. I don't know when the next official availability report has to come out for them. I guess sometime Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would be Friday, but that's a player who was on nobody's NBA draft watch list or boards and now has definitely shot up those boards.
A&M
production
with an easy victory over Georgia. Although Georgia, I mean, this is one of those classic tales of two halves, or tale of two halves. Georgia up 9 in College Station at the break. And there again, A&M said, let's play defense and score points. And they outscored the Dogs by 25 points in the second half.
Georgia goes, do we have to? The first 10 minutes of the second half, A&M outscored them 22-4.
Yeah, that's how to not win.
Makes a difference.
And Georgia did not. 69-53 the final. Nice. But the game of the night was in Rupp Arena as Kentucky. This was a really good game, man. I forgot the Auburn game. They do that one real fast, too. Auburn scored the first 15 points, but only led by 2 at the break. Vandy came out hot, took a lead, and then Auburn also decided to start playing lots of defense and really forced Vandy into some ugly possessions late. At one point, I finally switched. I was like, all right, you know what? Auburn is pulling away, and the Tennessee game was a lot more compelling. I was kind of flipping back and forth, but Auburn did hold on for a 12-point victory. But the game of the night, again, in Rupp, where UK beat UT 75-64. Tennessee was not good, Elijah, from three-point range last night. I don't want to say that was the only thing that made the difference, but you and I were talking about it this morning. This is not Tennessee's strength this season relative to last year, where you could just say, get the ball to Dalton Connect and let him score a lot of points. You can tell me better. I don't know that teams have figured anything out. I like the way you put it. Kentucky, listen, there are just times when there are bad matchups for good teams.
Yep.
And Kentucky, with the way they like to play, was just a bad matchup. Tennessee had chances. I don't think – sometimes we'll tell you that a score is fully indicative of a game after 40 minutes. I'm not sure this one was. I think Tennessee is better than an 11-point loss, but I also know Kentucky beat them in Knoxville a couple of weeks ago. I think the game was tighter than it may appear. But I would also say that Kentucky absolutely deserved to win the game.
Absolutely. And you look at a lot of other deciding factors that win games, like the 4 factors. I mean, Tennessee had a significantly better offensive rebound percentage. They made more free throws than Kentucky attempted. The turnover battle was very similar. It wasn't really strong one way or the other. Just the big difference is Kentucky got them in a 3-point shooting contest, and for the second straight game, won said 3-point shooting contest. They made 50% of their threes last night, went 12 of 24. And if you go back to
tell them what Tennessee did real quick, too.
Oh, yeah. Tennessee
from 3
was 3 of 18. I'll do the math here so you don't have to. And by that, I mean it's just presented in front of me. That's 16%. And in the first game, Kentucky also 12 of 24 from 3. So that is 24 of 48 in 2 games, 50%. And Tennessee in the first meeting was 11 of 45 for 24%. That has made the difference. And it's a bad matchup for Tennessee because Tennessee is an average 3-point shooting team. They are technically 1/10 of a percentage point higher than the national average. But Kentucky in a lot of games will get you in a 3-point shooting contest because of how they play defense. They play a lot of drop coverage on ball screens, which allows whoever's the ball handler to free themselves up to shoot a 3. Kentucky packs things in a lot. They don't want a lot of teams shooting in the paint or near the rim. And by doing so, kind of like Ole Miss, but to a bigger degree, will give up a lot of threes, too. They have an insanely high opponent 3-point shooting or 3-point attempt percentage. Almost half, of their opponent's shots come from 3 because that's what they're willing to give up in exchange of protecting the paint. Okay. Tennessee runs a lot of their offense trying to throw lobs to their bigs. They have a lot of dependency on their guards driving to the basket and being able to kick out and create offense that way. It's a bad matchup because Kentucky is an elite three-point shooting team. They almost make 40% of their threes on the season. And when they force Tennessee to do something they don't want to do because while their defense isn't efficient, they're good at making you do anything but shoot easy shots in the paint or near the rim. It's a bad combination for Tennessee. Even if they played in Nashville next month in the SEC tournament, that alone is going to be a big chore for Rick Barnes to figure out how exactly you're going to be able to continue to get more of what your offense does great against a defense that will just simply take away the one strength you have because that's what there is in their DNA.
Also tonight, Oklahoma is at Missouri. LSU is at Arkansas. That one could be interesting.
That could be a revenge game, yeah. LSU's only win in conference play is against Arkansas, so Arkansas has a chance for a little redemption.
Finally, in our drive around the SEC, our buddy Josh Pate of CBS Sports has a terrific, 3 times a week podcast that he puts out. He has ranked, based on where things are right now, in his opinion, the top 10 SEC football programs. And I love how he did this, and he's done this before. He's like, I want everybody to listen to me. I'm ranking the program, and he goes over a whole list of a 4-year rolling average of recruiting and your record and what you have on your it's a whole thing. And then he says, like, but don't worry, and I'm paraphrasing now. He's like, but immediately I'll get hits on Twitter of how could you rank so-and-so? They're not that good. And he's like, I told you what I was looking at. People just think it's a
power ranking.
He's like, this is a program ranking, not a team ranking, and there are differences. But he's got, let me get to it here, make sure I got it right. Number 1, no surprise, Georgia.
Yep, pretty easy.
Number 2, Texas.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Number 3, Alabama. And then he said 4 through 6, he said he could interchange them, and he knew this is where the pushback would start. Number 4, Tennessee.
Okay.
Number 5, LSU. He's a big fan of Nussmeier. I am too.
Nussmeier's pretty good.
And they recruit.
Very well, every year.
Number 6,
Regardless
Mississippi.
coach. Oh.
Yep. Number 7,
Okay.
Texas A&M. I get where he's going with A&M, but
I wouldn't leapfrog any of those programs.
8-4
ahead of them. Yeah.
And then let's see, number 8, Missouri.
Interesting. I mean, the record the last 2 years.
Yeah, what they've been doing, how they've been recruiting. Again, 4-year kind of rolling average of where the program is. I think he likes drink, and Eli's doing a good job.
And he recruits well.
He's doing a good job. Number 9, South Carolina.
Okay.
South Carolina. Again, loves Lenoris. Talked about Shane's recruiting efforts. That he
been great in the portal.
He mentioned their portal strength. And number 10, Florida.
Always cool to hear that South Carolina is, at least in one opinion, deemed as a better program.
There's
Florida. What a time to be alive.
There's 2 schools that aren't in this top 10. I'm not saying they should be. This is one opinion of somebody who follows the sport closely. One of the schools that's not in this is Auburn. The other one, Elijah Campbell, is the University of Oklahoma.
And I would agree on both those fronts.
I would too.
They don't belong in the top 10.
But Oklahoma, they got work to do, man.
That's an indictment of the trouble that Brent Venables is in.
Yeah.
I think that's a direct reflection as to how hot that seat should be.
Not saying Oklahoma should be there, saying Oklahoma's not there. Because Oklahoma should be there, if you follow my drift.
The expectation is that you're not just in that top 10, but you're high on that
what
list.
You're doing doesn't put you there. But you should be there because you're Oklahoma, and you're not. You can see Josh's work all the time. Just punch him up on YouTube. He's got a fun show if you haven't watched it already. That's the Drive Around the SEC brought to you by Herndon Chevy. This is the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show here on this Wednesday. Tomorrow on the program.
Thursday.
We will have our good friend Langston Moore joining us a day early, typically on Fridays. Football season is now over, but we have a baseball special on Friday. And then I told Langston as well, then he gets a reprieve until I don't know, at least sometime next month. We'll just give him a break. He can come on whenever he wants.
It's his off season.
Yeah, but I just don't want him to feel obligated, so he gets a reprieve. But we'll talk about the Super Bowl, and we have a fun. You know what, Elijah and I, we plan a lot. We often, somewhat on purpose, but not necessarily, leave things on the table. We have topics prepared, and one of them has been this week who. From the AFC, I think we touched on it briefly the other day, but we never got into it. Who from the AFC will miss next year's playoffs, assuming the same field, but adding in the Cincinnati Bengals?
And surely they can get in.
They better. If they don't, and I'm Joe Burrow, I'm out.
Zach Taylor's ass is grass, buddy.
So we'll talk to Langston about that, and Dak making some bold statements, which I appreciate.
Love the confidence.
Yeah, I got no problem with that. We'll touch on those things with Langston tomorrow, and we'll have a few other. I don't want to say the other guests because it's not a done deal yet. It's not a huge deal either way, but I just don't want to say it yet. Beyond that, y'all might remember a couple of weeks ago, Archie Miller of the University of Rhode Island, Sean Miller's brother, was at a press conference and threw out a stat about how good he was talking about how good the SEC was and just how hard it is in basketball and whatnot, and how the Southeastern Conference teams had a magnificent record in non-con play, but then cited what was clearly a joke tweet about how since January 3rd, teams in the Southeastern Conference, and I forget what the record was then, were at 500.
Wonder how that works.
Since that date. And then somewhere along the way, hopefully somebody, told him what was up and duh. Last night, Carl Ravitch in that Texas game, and I'm not sure why Carl Ravitch is calling basketball anyway, cited the same overall, the spirit of the statistic. But last night said it was 82 and 8. That it shows you how hard it is, and because the SEC teams since January 3rd are 82 and 82, and he was doing the same thing. And at first, because I finally heard the clip too, and I'm like, all right, where is he going to take me? And I guess he was working with Jimmy Dykes.
With Jimmy Dykes, yep, for the Alabama-Texas game.
And he kept going. And I was waiting, and I've seen a lot of tweets on it too, waiting for the punchline, Carl, kind of reaction. And there was none. He was serious. And then
not Carl. Archie Miller's one thing, but not Carl.
And then today he apparently said, "Oh no, it was all tongue in cheek, just trying to show you." I'm like, and the tweet, the reaction to his tweet of saying it was all tongue in cheek, no, it wasn't, buddy. No, it wasn't, buddy. It wasn't at all. And I don't think it was. Look, Carl's good at what he does. He's been doing it a long time. He's primarily a baseball guy. Although I've had my criticisms of his calls of the College World Series because it feels like, and here's the pitch. This player could be a good Dodger if he gets drafted by L.A. I'm like, bro, they're in Omaha for the College World Series. We can worry about their major league stuff later. But he was serious.
Oh, I mean, if
last
you go back and listen to it, he was dead serious.
He was dead serious.
He just got. It happens.
But I've never until this year never seen anybody do that anyway. And now twice in a 3-week span, we've had a famous head coach and a famous broadcaster both kind of fall for this. And I don't know if he's falling for it, if somebody's giving it to him, if he's looking in notes. I don't.
Or he saw the tweet and was like,
maybe.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting
I don't
tweet.
know. But he definitely was not. It wasn't tongue in cheek. Because you would say that at that point.
And he was using it to make a point.
Yeah, to make a point.
Which tells me, like, that was part, like, he saw that as, like, I'm going to use it, and then found an opportunity when the game was out of hand, because the game was out of hand, to create a talking point about how tough the SEC is.
But, again, not trying to rag too hard on
This
Carl.
is a public service announcement, right? If anybody sees this tweet, like the tweet that started all of this, it is facetious.
Right. And
each game has one winner and one loser.
Yes, I mean, it's just the obvious that I guess sometimes needs to be stated. In conference play alone, when it's all done, the record will be 500.
You want to know a hot take for Saturday?
Please.
The nation's top two teams, Alabama and Auburn, they'll be a combined 1-1.
Fair.
After Saturday, or on Saturday. Any given Saturday, man.
No money line on that one. Good stuff today. Appreciate Alan Cole's time. We'll do it all again tomorrow. For Elijah, I'm Jay. See you.